Hi friends, Rabbi Jenny Solomon in Raleigh, North Carolina. Happy to be with you this afternoon, this week of Parashat Noach. I mentioned at the end of my Mincha moment on Tuesday that I wanted to speak for a couple moments about this week's Torah portion in light of our spiritual practice. So whatever you do, whether your spiritual practice is comprised of meditation or prayer, yoga, embodied practice, dance, rest, whatever your spiritual practice may be, I believe there is a direct connection to this week's Torah portion, which is Noah. So interestingly, we have sort of center stage in this week's Torah portion, the Ark. And even if you're not Jewish or well-versed in Torah, you're probably familiar with this story of Noah and the Ark. So for me, spiritual practice is a form of taking refuge, of stepping onto my own ark, which is the body, and creating more space, more buoyancy, more room for rest and reflection. Not unsurprisingly, there is a connection between the word for rest in Hebrew, which is menucha, and Noach, the word for Noah, the name of Noah. Those two Hebrew roots go together. So I think we are forever wired to need rest. We know this is part of being human, but especially now, with the pace of the world, the way that things are changing constantly, the intensity of the things that we're facing out in the world and in here, all the more reason that we need rest. I took my own advice today and noticed actually for some time that I needed more rest and made some extra time to get on my yoga mat. And I'm grateful to my teacher, Jill, for sharing the following analogy. So while I was thinking about the ark and stepping onto the ark of my yoga mat and into my body, she used the metaphor of somebody who is pulling back a bow, kind of gathering in all the strands, all the pieces of who we are out in the world, pulling them back in, drawing them back in for rest, for renewal, so that when the arrow is released, what is able to be sent out into the world is filled with more wisdom, more grace, more beauty, more wholeness than before. And I wanted to add that the ark is a particularly apt metaphor for me, along with the bow and arrow, which was so beautiful, because the ark is rudderless. There's no GPS, there's no motor or engine. The ark is really all about floating, about faith, about feeling buoyant, and trusting that we, A, don't have to get anywhere, and B, we don't even need to know the destination. We'll get where we need to go. And finally, I want to mention a very special feature of the ark. There is a description in this week's Torah portion that the ark is to be constructed with a tzohar. And tzohar is one of those words in the Torah that is only used once. So it's very hard to know exactly what it means because we don't have context anywhere else to help us understand. One way of understanding the tzohar, Rashi teaches, is that it's like a window, a little window that allows in light. And perhaps you've seen artistic depictions of the ark and it has a window at the top. That's where it comes from. We have Rashi to thank for that, among other commentators. But I think that one of the core meanings of the tzohar for me is that we use our spiritual practice as an ark, as a refuge, as a place for sacred rest, not so that we can become separate from the world, not so that we cut ourselves off from all the things that are happening that demand our attention and our engagement, but so that, like the arrow that is drawn back in the bow of the archer, when we come back into the world, we never lose sight of that light, of that land out there that is calling us back. But when we step out after our period of rest, whatever that sacred rest looks like for you, we have more to give. We have something truer to share with the world. We have something more whole, more wise to share with the world. So it's not about sort of landing on a mountaintop, even though I fantasize about that from time to time. It's not about landing on a mountaintop somewhere and spending my life out disconnected from the day-to-day happenings of our society, of our world, of my community, of my family. It's about staying always connected to that through the window, through the Zohar. But knowing that my work, my spiritual work, is a critical component for the goodness that I can bring out to others when my rest is complete. So I hope this is helpful for you as you perhaps take a pause in your own schedule, and as you continually commit and recommit to your spiritual practice, not only for its own sake, but for the sake of bringing our best selves to this one precious life.